Moving on, spy drones over America. Lawmakers demand answers on privacy safeguards by Steve Watson. A bipartisan pair of congressmen joined forces Thursday to put important questions to the Federal Aviation Administration regarding the agency's plans to open up American skies to thousands of surveillance drones. They've also actually now, after a threat of lawsuit, published this map which shows you which states have given permission for these surveillance drones to be used in. Hawaii has barred it, and there are also a handful of other US states that have prevented permission, refused to grant permission for these surveillance drones to be flown in those particular states. So basically, these congressmen have written a letter to the FAA asking how this relates to privacy, how it's going to violate people's privacy. But, you know, I guess if we listen to the trendies over at Forbes, the same people who say Bill Gates is a hero and drones used to hunt insurgents in Afghanistan are, you know, good for privacy, I guess, then I suppose that the mass use of drones in law enforcement is good for privacy. I mean, that's the new trendy doublethink. Everything that destroys privacy is in fact good for privacy. That's what the trendies say over at Forbes. Moving on, climate alarmist calls for burning down skeptics' homes. And this is actually featured over the Drudge Report today as one of their top headlines. And once again, eco-fascism raises its ugly head. And this is Steve Zwick writing for, you guessed it, Forbes Magazine once again. Destroying privacy is good for privacy. And basically he says, if you dare to challenge the brainwashing on climate change, then your house should be allowed to burn to the ground. Quote, we know who the active denialists are, not the people who buy the lies, mind you, but the people who create the lies. Let's start keeping track of them now. And when the famines come, let's make them pay. Let's let their houses burn. Let's swap their safe land for submerged islands. Let's force them to bear the cost of rising food prices. Right, Zwick, adding they broke the climate. Why should the rest of us have to pay for it? So again, the alarmists have lost the debate. The polls show belief in man-made global warming is plummeting. And the alarmists have resorted to using threats and intellectual coercion because the pseudoscience behind their fictional control freak agenda is collapsing. You know, we had the article last week. Arctic sea ice expanding, polar bears thriving, emperor penguins thriving, Himalayan glaciers expanding, you know, coldest April in Britain for 100 years. So, but our houses need to burn for simply pointing that information out, apparently, according to Zwick. So I just say keep them coming. I mean, they're only discrediting themselves in the public arena with each successive temper tantrum that these climate alarmists have. And, you know, this is by no means the worst of it. People have called for putting skeptics up on Nuremberg war crimes trials, treating them for mental disorders, labeling them as racists. We had the 1010 Global organization with its satire ad showing kids who refuse to lower their carbon footprints being blown up in an explosion of blood and guts. I mean, there was an article today out of the Telegraph where this green Nazi control freak actually tried to say that climate change was a feminist issue. So again, anything, everything to shift it away from the fact that, you know, the case is collapsing. That's why they refuse to debate the skeptics anymore. They just call for them to be strung up, put on trial, killed, houses burned down. And the fact is, these people don't care about real environmental problems. They're not concerned about the horrors that Monsanto are inflicting upon the planet. The eugenicists, they're the ones that are set to make all the power and money off the global carbon tax. And they're pushing a dogma that's anti-human. It seeks to demolish the very underpinnings of what makes a free and prosperous society. And they want to replace it with their scientific dictatorship, planned-opolist nightmare, which is why they're coming out with all these threats and intimidation that we need to shut up, otherwise we're going to be targeted as personally responsible when their whole scientific technocracy comes into being. Next story on InfoWars Nightly News. Chimps throwing poop and 29 other mind-blowing ways the government is wasting your money. And a lot of this, funnily enough, is actually the same kind of scientists that milk the gravy train of global warming that gives them all these millions of dollars in federal government grant money. So this article at Economic Collapse blog basically just lists some of the mind-blowingly pointless things that the federal government is funding to the tune of hundreds of thousands and in some cases millions of dollars, while the people are told, you know, they must labor under poverty and austerity. And here's just a few of them. You can read the full list at the original article. In 2011, the National Institutes of Health spent $592,000 on a study that sought to figure out once and for all why chimpanzees throw poop. Because obviously that's very important to understand. You know, food stamp usage is at record levels, the debt's out of all control, but they're spending nearly $600,000 on figuring out why chimps throw poo at each other. Okay, that's great. Here's another one. National Institutes of Health, again, spent more than $5 million on a website called Sex Pulse that's targeted at men who use internet to seek sex with men. Again, your tax dollars at work. Federal government is spending millions of dollars to train Asian call center workers, outsourcing your jobs in the process. The federal government spent $175,000 to determine if cocaine makes Japanese quail engage in sexually risky behavior. So that's obviously, you know, I guess it's a national security issue or something. $600,000 spent or given to researchers at Columbia University by the federal government to study how heterosexuals use the internet to find love. Again, that's worth $600,000 of your money any day. They also gave $3 million to researchers at the University of California at Irvine to fund their research into video games such as World of Warcraft, another worthy cause. National Institutes of Health, $400,000 to study why gay men in Argentina engage in risky sexual behavior when they're drunk. Maybe we should, you know, spend another $500,000 on seeing if that's connected to the Japanese quails who also engage in sexually risky behavior, God knows. But that's just a few of them. There's about 30 different ones, and you can go to the original article and read about it, but it's just an illustration of out-of-control government spending on all kinds of ridiculous crap while we're being told that we've got to pay for the bailouts and everything else.